Hello, my Taurus friends. In this video, we are going to be looking at the entire year of 2026 in a tarot reading spread, where we are going to address every single month of the upcoming year in the world of love and romance. For those of you who are in an established relationship, we will look at each month to see what you can watch out for in your relationship, but we will also be dealing with the concepts that can come up when you are not in a relationship. Perhaps you have your eye on someone in particular. And then lastly, we are going to be discussing patterns and details that might come up for people who are single and looking to bring love into their life. Maybe they haven't done that in quite some time. But let me get these cards laid out here first off and organized, because I am shuffling them right in front of you. And this video is going to be lengthy. This video could be 40 minutes long because we are looking at every single month. Now, the deck that I'm using right now is called the Yokai Tarot deck. It is a deck based off of the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And it is therefore going to have the same interpretations as the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith. But this is not the only deck that I'm going to use today. I am also going to end up using a deck called the Dark Fantasy Tarot deck for a little bit of an extra digging into each prospective month. All right, let's zoom out a little bit here. Here it is, all laid out. It is going to look like we dig into January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December, so that you know the full layout. All right, everybody, are you ready? Let's get into it. We are starting off with the energy of the Judgment card. The Judgment card is unique. And if you've ever had readings from me before, you know that I love to look into historical concepts, mythology, and especially Gnosticism, because I consider myself interested in Gnostic tarot, as I've been studying Gnosticism for 2 decades now. And the Judgment card, in a modern sense, gets looked at like the Catholic concept of judgment, like a judgment has been made. It's like it's got a Book of Revelations, resurrection kind of vibe. When people think about Judgment Day, they typically think of this card, the Judgment card. But from a Gnostic perspective, looking at it the way that Arthur Edward Waite had spoken of, he had mentioned that he believed that it may be suitable that these cards could be looked at through the lens of what's called Albigensianism. These are a group of people from southern France who essentially was slaughtered by the Catholic Church for their beliefs that they held the true Christianity. They were not fans of the Catholic Church, and they had a belief system that came in line with Gnostic concepts that can be found from over 2,000 years ago. And in these concepts, the Albigensians would have borrowed from Gnosticism, like the Valentinians, the Sethians, the Barbalites. This is, again, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century AD that we're talking about. And in those traditions, judgment was looked at more like a calling. And so in this case, because this is a card connected to notifications, a calling, a yearning, an urge, then we can attribute that to your life. Whereas the ancient Gnostics or the Albigensians would have thought of this calling like returning to God, returning to source, or what they called at the time the monad. In your life, it's a calling to your purpose. It's a calling to your path. And in this case, it could be bringing love into your life. Now, traditionally, in terms of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, it typically has an angel on the front of the card of judgment, and the angel is holding a trumpet. This is one of the reasons why it gets a Judgment Day, blasting of the trumpets, Book of Revelations vibe. And even in that case, a trumpet is one of the symbolic ways that you can understand that a message is coming, or that a calling is coming, a notification is coming. And so for those of you who are dealing with somebody, judgment could mean that you have communication coming in this coming January of 2026. The information could be heavy, important, valuable, the kind of communication that you get from a person that you might have your eye on. And I'm going to pull a clarification card in a moment to kind of set this one next to like set an extra card next to the Judgment card. Because if you know anything about traditional tarot, Arthur Edward Waite was a fan of putting cards together. He was pro clarification cards. Like most tarot decks are based off of his deck. And you guys know me and my views of Arthur Edward Waite stand firmly that I appreciate the way that he reads tarot. And so I'm going to bring that into this. I'm going to have a clarification card for that. But I also want to mention, although there's that idea of like important communications that you could have in the realms of people who are single or people who are just speaking to someone, it could be that in the month of June, you find that a person that you're starting to communicate or you're being drawn to is bringing like really valuable wisdom-based communications with you that offer a centering of yourself, a centering of your understanding of where you stand in the realms of dynamics. How deeply are you willing to search for love? What kind of habits do you have in love? What kind of things are you willing to accept when you communicate with people? Is kind of the energy that I get. Let's grab this other deck, though, for the month of January and see what we have with the Judgment card. Because there is a part of me that says, what is the calling? What is this judgment? What is this communication that's coming in? I love the energy of this. Oh, it's the card of the Strength. And again, in terms of Gnosticism, that Strength card is valuable because of its connections to the carnal body, because of its connections to a mythological character known as the Demiurge, in which these characters in history or the aspect of the carnal body reminds us to overcome not just obstacles outside of ourselves, or difficulties of, money, location, jobs, finances. Yes, those are difficulties that we can overcome outside of us. But this reminds us that there are obstacles within us, within our body, where we might lead ourselves to be a little bit on autopilot. But with this in the upright position, it's kind of like battling against the 7 deadly sins. If you want to take it from a Gnostic perspective of the carnal body and look at it as more modern or maybe Catholic, modern Christian perspective, then the 7 deadly sins is something that you battle within yourself and is highly valuable to understand when you're in the dynamics of talking with someone or dating someone or being called to date someone, being called to try and bring love into your life. Because what use is it to be a person who has the 7 deadly sins essentially floating around in your sphere and have those impact a relationship? Because ultimately, if you have something like that in the relationship, it usually puts a fork in the road, not a fork in the road, but a fork in the wheel. It jams things up when you have to tackle something that's really heavy like that. So getting it done now, or keeping your eye out for whether or not somebody has a certain trait that might be negative, or heavy, and removing that before it becomes a problem, looks like it could be on your mind in this particular time of January. And when I say 7 deadly sins, again, I don't mean to put necessarily a Catholic monk view on it, but I do understand that when it comes to gluttony, if we have too much gluttony, if we're eating too much, if we're not keeping healthy, if we're not sleeping enough, it can impact our relationships. If someone is too lustful and they're sleeping around, and they don't have commitment, it can bring problems. If someone is too greedy or their love is just on material things and money, it can bring problems in a relationship. You see what I'm saying? So there's this dynamic with it in the upright position where you are centering yourself in the month of January. You are being called to center yourself. And in the upright position, you're doing it effectively, which is amazing. Also within the upright position, it does insinuate that you may end up spending time with or talking to people who are also doing that and also interested in it. And perhaps with the Judgment card, you might end up speaking with people or with a person that you're interested in, who is not just interested in it, but can, how would you say, be like compatible and do it with you. Like, is interested in those things. It's almost got a bit of this energy for this particular portion of the reading of people who have good common value systems. And again, if you don't have that, think the 7 deadly sins. It'll fuck a relationship up, quite frankly, won't it? If the value systems are off kilter. All right, let's look at February now. February is interesting because we have good energy, like I said, in terms of this calling and this yearning and communication coming in for January. But February, we have the Ace of Cups in the reversal. And it's not negative in the reversal position, but it usually speaks of a time period where what you should have essentially is like it's supposed to be this time frame of an over abundant energy of happiness. Your cup runneth over. That's why the depiction quite literally has cups overflowing, but it's on a delay. So again, it is this time frame of waiting for your cup to runneth over is what the vibe feels like, especially in the reversal position. Let's pull out an extra card and see if we can kind of gather why you feel like things are delayed in the month of February. Oh, it's the Four of Wands. Look at that. Beautiful energy, beautiful harvest. For some of you, you may be talking to somebody that you have begun speaking to in January, and the ability for you to finalize getting together or uniting could be on a delay. For others of you, if you're already in a relationship with someone, there may be some kind of a project that you have or some kind of a goal with this person that's taking a little bit longer, but it's going to come to fruition with the Four of Wands in the upright position and with the Ace of Cups in the upright position. For those of you who are single and looking to date someone, again, there is this perception that you may have this calling towards or actually start speaking to somebody in and around the month of January. And it's just in this beginning phases of communication where you're aware that it's taking time, but that you're on the right path to getting that successful unity. It's just not there yet. I also want to say that for some people who are in this process of starting to feel out and speak with or consider dating people, then the delay might be this reality that you're aware. Like if you haven't begun speaking to someone by this point and January is more like your yearning, more like your calling, then by February you become aware that you can have success, but that it's going to take time because you're going to have to do it right. And what do they say? In life, there's that expression that the things that take time are worth it, or sometimes things that are harder are worth it. You see what I'm saying? So there's this almost acceptance of the fact that you're going to have happiness. You're just aware of the delay and the processing that it will take to get to that level. Let us look at the month of March. Again, we come to this position of time. This is unique though. It is, with the card of the moon, it is this concept in the reversal, rather. Don't mind if I keep saying and I'm an person. In any case, the reversal position insinuates that the sun is actually coming up soon. If you think of it like the cycles of heaven, when the moon goes down, the sun comes up. Well, right now, your card was in the reversal position. So the sun is what could be present soon enough. And then eventually, the cycles happen again where things get a little bit dark in life and then the sun comes back up. You get a little more revelation. That's just how life happens. What goes up must come down. What goes down must come back up again. People grow, they change, then they go to another phase. They grow some more, they change again, they absorb it some more, they do it all over again. That's this nature that comes with the growth facet of the moon. So I feel like in the month of March, there's this wanting to know something, like there's almost a riddle that you might be trying to solve and it's not quite there. So it's more like you spend the time pondering, thinking. Some of this could be connected to overthinking, just because the moon does have a little bit of moodiness that comes to it because it is a dark centered, night centric energy. I will also say that the moon card is connected to fertility. Because it is Mother Moon energy, but also with that rabbit on the front, there's a good reason why rabbits get put on moon cards like that or fertility cards. It's along with that expression. Well, what is it? Hump like a rabbit? You know what I mean? Rabbits they spread and they spread some more. And so for some of you, there could be a fertility aspect that kind of feels like it's on your mind in that particular month of March. It's not necessarily the energy of having children, but a family energy could be present for some of you. It could be, again, thinking about, when am I going to have a family? That might be heavy on your mind in that particular month. the card that we have associated with it is the Lover's card in the reversal. You know, I feel like the reason that that has come up is because of an energy of separation. And when I say separation, I mean the Lover's card in the upright traditionally brings people together into balance. In the reversal, there's less balance present. But in the Gnostic perspective of the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, which is what the lovers are about, in the traditional tarot, it's the picture of the Garden of Eden. They are supposed to get out of that particular garden because they are elevating themselves into the journey of humanity. And sometimes that involves a separation from source. That's the reality of leaving the Garden of Eden. If we look at it from a mythological perspective, it was an aspect of tackling things like ignorance, tackling things like separation, fullness, tackling the understandings of knowledge in that reversal position. But it is also a card, according to Arthur Edward Waite, of predetermination, essentially meaning that in a Christian mysticism way of looking at things, or again, a Gnostic perspective, it was meant to happen. The falling out or the separation or the time, the cycles of the time that it take was meant to happen. Now we've got this next to the card of confusion, and then being backed up with this idea of like, how much time is it going to take? How much confusion is there going to be? How much separation is there going to be? And you can kind of put the two together as if to insinuate that this is what your confusion is about. What is the confusion about? The separation and the fact that you guys are not necessarily unified. So for those of you who do deal with talking to somebody over the January, February bit, it doesn't look like it's concretely into a relationship. You guys are still in a facet of separation. I don't mean like you broke up or something. I just mean it hasn't been decided necessarily to integrate yourself into a relationship, which is usually what happens when people are getting to know each other. A lot of times people think forming a relationship is something you have two conversations and you're just head over heels and you fall in love as if it's the year 2006 and we're all watching Jersey Shore on the TV again. You know what I mean? But that's not the real reality of how relationships form. They take time, and they don't just take a few months. A lot of the times they take an exorbitant amount of time to really truly know another person. And so it could feel like that if you're beginning to speak with somebody. It's this time of getting to know them, getting to know different aspects of themselves. Now, for those of you, again, who are single at this time, and perhaps not speaking with someone, then that continued energy from the month before about the delay seems like it's still present as we get into the month of March. It's this confusion over why you haven't necessarily found that person yet. The interesting aspect of both of these cards is the cycles of heaven are predetermined in these traditions. So when we ask ourselves, why isn't my time here to fall in love yet? And the answer is because it's not your time. Because your time is going to happen at the time it's supposed to, not when you force it to. And that is the story, like I mentioned, that Arthur Edward Waite spoke of when he published his book, The Pictorial Key to the Tarot, in 1910. He said the lovers are a card of predetermination, predestined energy is what he said, which means the time for unity and coming together, like the historical concept of the bridegroom. Oh, my door just rang. I'm pretty sure a Christmas gift is here. One moment. But he also essentially meant that includes the coming together of the bridegroom at the exact right time. All right. Sorry about my stuttering there, guys. You wouldn't know it, but I just assembled an entire trampoline and came back to this reading. So, with that being said, where we left off, when we spoke about the issue of predetermination, just know that in that month, one of the ways to satisfy that feeling, or question rather, in your confusion, if that seems to be the energy of that particular month, about why is it not your turn? Why is it not your time? Why have you not found love? Just find a bit of solace, if you can, with the idea that it's not your time because it's not your time, and the universe has an exact time for you. You just have to get to it. Now, what I notice here also is that the next month, as we get into April, has brought up that stuck energy again. But it's unique in this case. We've got the Eight of Swords. And the Eight of Swords is quite literally a depiction of a woman who is bound up and who is stuck. This person is also a little bit blindfolded, which doubles down on that energy of somebody saying, what do I do? How do I get myself out of this situation? How do I bring love in the right way? Why is it not happening in the right way? Or if you are dealing with a certain person, why are there some difficulties or delays with coming together with my person in the way that you want? The answer to this energy is that you actually have the key right in front of you and within you. You just can't see it. You see how her eye is closed. It insinuates that you will continue to kind of dig for that answer in and around that time period of April of how to unify yourself into a love relationship. But the answer that you seek is actually right where you are. So let's think of it now in the reversal position for a second here, because you did get that Eight of Swords in the reversal. And in this case, with the Eight of Swords, whether it's in the upright or the reversal, it is frustration and difficulty. But there is more of a reality that the unfortunate circumstance or unfortunate energy or unforeseen problem in and around the time of April is in tandem with a potential accident. Like accidentally not being able to see something, or somebody sets themselves up or communicates something accidental. So just watch out for self-sabotage energies that could come out from that particular period around April. Perhaps saying something too quickly. In the realms of dating or with a partner, somebody might speak too quickly and kind of put their foot in their mouth, essentially. I'm also going to, as usual, grab another card here to see about this Eight of Swords reversal. Also, while I'm shuffling this, thank you very much to anyone who watches this over the next year for being okay with when my children interrupt me, or if I stutter my way through a doorbell ringing, or well, that was presents that arrived at my front door on Christmas and my kids got to see them before they were in the package. So if you're bearing with me while I deal with all of that, or if you hear my children in the background, I thank you very much for allowing me to try and get my life done while also trying to get your reading done. Now, the combination card here that we have with the Eight of Swords is the Page of Wands in the reversal. It's unfortunate to get this card in the reversal because the Page of Wands and the Knight of Wands and the King of Wands usually gets a bad rep in the world of modern tarot. People look at this particular card and the Knight and the King of Wands as being prideful, egotistical, when in fact, Arthur Edward Waite spoke of the Page of Wands, the Knight of Wands, the King of Wands when in the upright position as being an honest and kind and faithful and committed lover. A passionate person who is on the right path. And that is still the same when it is the Knight in the reversal or even the King in the reversal. A lot of people look at the King of Wands and they say, oh, he's so uncommitted if he's the King of Wands in the reversal. He just lies, he's deceptive. Those two don't actually have that. They remain honest regardless. It's the Page of Wands in the reversal that brings the sentiment of dishonesty. And that makes me feel like, again, with this energy of feeling stuck and accidents in the month of April's energy here, and that necessity to be careful with what someone says or what you might say, whichever way it goes, when it comes to who you might be talking to on the internet, or whether it comes to situations in an actual relationship, that somebody might genuinely make a mistake with their words, but they might fall into that concept because they're either deceptive to the other person a little bit or they're lying to their own selves about something. I will, though, say that for some of you, it's not deception that gets a person stuck. It will be indecision. Page of Wands in the reversal is notorious for being a person who is stuck in the same spot because they cannot choose. They cannot choose whether to move forward. They cannot choose the words to say, so they hold off. It's a stagnancy that happens. Indecision, again, can a lot of the times lead to stagnancy. As they say, sometimes making no decision is in and of itself a decision. And so the Page of Wands being paired with a card of somebody who's stuck in the same position is fairly fitting, that this may be a moment in April where the energy feels like nothing is moving. to put it quite frankly, whether you're in a relationship with somebody or whether you're in the dating world. The delay for you seems like it is through a couple of months at the beginning of 2026. What's very interesting is a new path begins to open up in the month of May, and the Lovers card is involved. We're going to see that a little bit as we progress in the months. You suddenly have Kings showing up, which is people, Queens showing up, taking things slowly but in a good way. Let me get to that in a moment, but it all starts here in this month of May. The Fool card, which is the central theme of your month of May, right around the time of your solar return, to be quite frank, because May is that Taurus-esque season, right? The Fool card brings a new path. And a new path does insinuate that there is the potential of a cycle ending. So it could be that you spend a period for the first couple of months either communicating with somebody and it stalls out, so you just kind of let things drift apart with this person, or you put an end, not necessarily to speaking to somebody, but an end to what it was that was causing this concept of stagnancy and a lack of growth. And again, for each one of you, it will be different. That could be stagnancy within an action that the other person is doing. Maybe somebody speaks up all of a sudden to cut through the stagnant non-motion. Or perhaps there is a habit within yourself that you say, enough is enough. I will say also, if I haven't already, that for some of you, that does include a new person who could come in and around this time, especially if a previous relationship has felt stagnant. Because it's the card of a new path, sometimes a new path does come with new people. But let's get another shuffle here. Let's pull that Dark Empath Tarot deck out and get a complimentary card. Okay, all right. We have the Queen of Pentacles in the reversal showing up. This is a really heavy energy to have. Because, quite frankly, the Queen of Pentacles is one of the only cards, along with the King of Pentacles, that actually gets the key of, like the key word of evil, suspicious, mistrusting in the reversal. And it, as opposed to, say, plum evil, mistrusting and suspiciousness is a key concept to the Queen of Pentacles in the reversal. Now, people don't usually go on a new path of suspicion and mistrust, but because this is the card of newness, it insinuates that for many of you, what actually could be ending and starting new is that someone is putting an end to the mistrust, which I think would be perfect in this example here. Now, in the event that this suspicion was had because of a third party, perhaps some of you have had your eye on someone who's acting like a queen energy, but in a suspicious sense. Or this might not necessarily be third party. This could be problems with in-laws, so a coworker that your person knows, things like that. Could be suspicious energy floating around at the time of May. With you going on a new journey, it would insinuate a change from that person as an example, so that it can lead you to that new path of dealing with suspiciousness. Maybe this person is no longer present as much, or maybe the person that you're talking to at that time handles the situation so you can go on a new path. I'm going to pull one extra card for this particular one because I do know that for some of you, when we have a card of newness and a card of suspiciousness, then there could be some of you that are bringing in suspicion in that month. So let me just grab one extra clarification card. And no, it is not. It is a perspective thing. It is just suspicions in the relationship in the past that have led you into the stuck energy. There's a change over that, a change in the perspective. That's why we have stuck energy here, and that previous card that we had with the Lovers in the reversal position, right? From earlier on in the reading, we had this consistent energy of somebody feeling stuck, and this is where the change is. So it is not a new person as far as this reading goes. It's more like a new perspective. Let's see about the month of June. We are halfway through the year here, and there is a phenomenal energy of learning going on in this relation, in this, not just relationship, but in this relationship reading. And for those of you looking to get into a relationship or just dating somebody, this path over the first couple of the months is really kind of almost honing in on your reality that you will have to understand of the nature of you and how you handle stagnancy and suspicion. Does stagnancy make you more suspicious? Do you deal with people in your life that might be suspicious of you? How do you handle dynamics with a partner who might be suspicious or might be leading these feelings of suspiciousness to rile up in you? Of course, as I mentioned all the way at the beginning, the idea of the Strength card being attached to things like the 7 deadly sins, suspiciousness is an energy connected to covetedness. And covetedness is sometimes attached to avarice, for the love of whichever it might be, for the love of money, for the love of power, for the love of control, so that you can feel safe. So I find it unique that as we go along in these months, we're actually watching a bit of a pattern emerge about the life lesson that you'll have in love, whether you're with a person or not. Because this kind of suspicion and covetedness and wanting someone else in your life in a certain way, that can bring up those ideas in one's mind about suspicion, whether you're dating someone or not. You can meet someone completely new and look at a profile picture of theirs and be like, I don't know if that person makes me comfortable, or, I wonder what that person's lifestyle is going to be like. Do I want to get involved in it? And these are very important dynamics of the learning curve of relationships to understand, because it allows you to know who you are in a relationship, who you are when you get into a relationship, and what kind of person you want invited into your life in the hopes that they can handle you in that relationship and you can handle them. What kind of boundaries might be needed? What kind of exploring and healing of those kind of perspectives could be had? You know, if it was something like cards of stagnancy, and then a birth card, it would feel a little odd, it would feel a little out of place. But in this case, we're getting these cards of confusion, stagnancy, and then a new path. And a new path fits right in hand with that pattern that we would know typically exists in the world whenever people have an experience of stagnancy. Stagnancy can only go so far. Suspicion and confusion can only go so far. Eventually, by the nature of everything in the universe, something's got to give. And May is that time frame that something tries to make way. By June, though, the Chariot card is in the reversal and a hiccup does occur. The Chariot card is typically the card of victory, but it's usually a depiction in Arthur Edward Waite, Rider-Waite Smith way of looking at things. It's a depiction of somebody who's already won the victory and they're on their chariot driving back to announce their victory. There is a good depiction on a tarot deck that I have called the Vice Versa Tarot that depicted the energy of when the chariot is in the reversal, because the road underneath and the gravel underneath this chariot is all broken apart. And so in the reversal, you end up with the energy of what's called the stumbling block, where there is something in June where you felt this stagnancy for a couple of months and you really tried a new avenue, you tried a new path, you tried to lift it off in love, and then something blocks you again. It's like a double hit. And when people have that happen, again, they typically say to themselves, oh my God, what the hell? Something's got to give, right? Why is this happening again? Why do I feel stuck again? That's usually pivoting around some kind of a lesson that the universe brings back that needs to be integrated. And there's a part of me that wonders, I should check into when the next Mercury retrogrades are going to be in the year 2026. I haven't yet, because there's a part of me that almost wants to put money down. If we're getting cards of a repeated lesson, watch the Mercury retrograde be May and June-ish area. Don't quote me on that, but that's the nature of what I mean by this repetition thing that seems to be happening among those 2 months. There's a doubling down of a reintegration of a lesson where you hit a roadblock again. But again, as usual, let us grab an extra clarification card here, shuffle it out a little bit, and see why is it there is a roadblock occurring for this month of June. Okay. Oh, wow. The Ace of Cups. Interesting. I say interesting because if you remember, in the earlier part of the year, the Ace of Cups, the card of delay, was there. We've got another deck, and now we have the exact same card coming up, as if to say that the problem that's in June, this roadblock of getting your overpowering overabundant feeling of happiness is connected to the same frustration that you might have had in February, which I'm reading this tarot reading for you in the year 2025. So we haven't gotten to February 2026 yet. But when you do, if there's some kind of a frustration and a delay that happens in 2026 of February, you may see that reoccur by the time you get into June of 2026. Something else that I think is valuable about that reoccurring theme is that when something reoccurs like that over a long enough period of time, a person can be prone to rumination, overthinking, dwelling on a past situation because it's coming up again. And in that event, for some of you, again, if you're single, you could be like, why is this not working out again? Why kind of vibe like that? Why do I feel like this is taking so long? I also want to say for those of you, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but it's evident to me a little bit now, for those of you in relationships and love and romance, attempting to get into a family unit, you're trying to get pregnant and pregnancies, this could be the delay for some of you. Because look at the pattern. The very first card in January, what is he circling around? The snake is circling around the seed. And the delay, the Ace of Cups in the reversal, Ace of Cups is traditionally a card of family and birth. So the fact that there's that original Ace of Cups in the reversal with the card of the delay, and then still by the time you get into June, this energy of a difficulty going forward with the Ace of Cups energy. For some of you, you might find that things like conception in a relationship are taking a lengthy amount of time and it's irritating you. I say that because sometimes when people get a full 12-month reading like this from me, they want to know, what month am I getting pregnant? And I'm starting to see that for some of you, you might not just be interested in typical love and relationship for the sake of, going on dates and stuff. But that to me, there's a little bit of energy of family planning that seems evident. What I think is unique though, that's for the month of June. And as we transition into the month of July, you have a very grounded energy. Not a super surprise, hey, look at everything works out, hunky-dory energy, but an energy of acceptance, balance, and delicacy that's coming with the Temperance card now for that month of July. And in this energy of acceptance and stillness and no longer suspicion, it makes me kind of want to shuffle and say to myself, in this month of July 2026, what did you accept? What is it that put you in that position after months and months of stagnancy, that it's almost like the energy of letting go, give in and let God is suddenly here in the energy. It's a very calm release of not feeling a need to control the dynamic in relationships or in love and family, but to just let it unfold. And look at that. The card that you have is now the Chariot in the upright. This was it the entire time. What was right in front of you? The dynamic of allowing for your love and relationships. The Chariot card earlier, that answer that you were trying to resolve that I said was in front of you the whole time. The answer was acceptance. That was the key to removing the suspicion, the key to removing the stagnancy and opening up a path for you so that you didn't hit a roadblock. That is a phenomenal lesson to learn that will improve relationships, improve dating, and improve your correspondence with whoever it is that you're dealing with in the realms of love in 2026. And at the very, I would say very least, but the most important, how you deal with acceptance within your own self as a person who's playing this role in your relationship life. In the realms of acceptance, I think I'm going to have to put this on pause for a second. Don't worry, I'll be right back. But my children are currently arguing over playing a video game. And I'm going to go teach them a little bit of an understanding of acceptance myself. And then I'll be right back. Okay, we'll see if that works out. I'm back. When it comes to Taurus and the realms of acceptance, I think it's well known that Taurus, being the bullheaded, stubborn energy that it can be, acceptance is a phenomenal lesson, especially in the realms of love and relationships, that is useful, again, for you to integrate. It's one of your core lessons. One of the core lessons for Taurus is that energy of letting go. If you think about it historically speaking, what does a Taurus or what does the bull usually do in history? It was the one who plowed the field through so much hard work and dedication to things like family and working together with, well, those who would plow the field like a farmer. Ultimately, you can only plow so much in a relationship. You can only forge so much ahead until it's kind of like a flower that's growing. You just have to let the universe bring a little bit of rain, bring a little bit of sunshine, and change things up so that you can harvest the benefits. And so it brings in that lesson of letting go and allowing for things to unfold naturally. And that's what it looks like you're doing. We are going to progress on to the month of August now, what we have here in August is the Lover's card in the reversal. Again, this is an energy that can involve separation, but can involve an imbalance of sorts and a need for integrating two sides of yourself. So there is this feeling in the month of July where you take the time to calmly accept things, and then perhaps the integration phase starts to happen more by the time you get into August. But as usual, let's get a little bit of an extra shuffle here and see what it's connected to is the Eight of Wands. It's your target. It's your goal. It's the communication and the way that you speak with respect to love with the Eight of Wands in the upright. Ultimately, that does make me think that communication that you have with another person that you're interested in, that you haven't fully gone through the process of integration of things like stagnancy, suspicion, but you're gently journeying into the realms of acceptance, this person may communicate with you. You may be communicating with somebody in and around that time, or some kind of news or goal or accomplishment comes into your life that much more fully to allow you to integrate that dynamic that was once disbalanced with the lovers in the reversal, so that at some point you can get those lovers united and in the upright, which I will say, as I mentioned at the, I think, beginning to middle part of this reading, the first half of your year does incorporate a lot of lessons in the realms of love and relationship, but we're coming up to that point where all of a sudden we have a lot of people, kings, queens, rehashing things, and the potential of unity. And we'll get to that in just a moment. First, though, now that we've dealt with August, let's look at September. The King of Pentacles is here, and this is, again, the second time that we have seen one of the court cards of Pentacles. We saw the Queen of Pentacles. Now we're dealing with the King of Pentacles. Both of them were in the reversal. And so there's a bit of mirroring energy. But much like the Queen of Pentacles, as I mentioned, the King of Pentacles in the reversal also can have a propensity towards negativity. Remember, I use the word plum evil to sometimes describe the Queen of Pentacles in the reversal, but hers is more of a suspicious and mistrust, right? Whereas the King of Pentacles, he can be more deliberate with his more evil side, you could say. Because quite frankly, his comes with a energy of corruption at times, especially in the realms of finances, because it is a pentacle. But oddly enough, especially in the realms of intellectual understanding. I know people think intelligence belongs to the King of Swords because everyone thinks, oh, swords, they think modern, they're like swords must mean air must mean thinking. And it's an easy way for people to remember the dynamics of a different element. Like air equals swords, right? That's how a lot of people learn tarot. But over 100 years ago, the intelligence factor actually belonged to the King of Pentacles because he was the most grounded in reality, the most grounded in the tangible, strategic lifestyle, because he's a builder of sorts. What do you do with the earth around you, with the ground around you? You build. And in order to do it effectively, you have to do it strategically. So he is actually highly intellectual. The King of Swords was actually the militant leader. He was a military leader, whereas the King of Pentacles is the one who builds things like an empire or a city, more connected to being a king instead of a militant leader. But again, in the reversal, there's corruption. And so it begs to the question next, what is the corruption? Why is the King of Pentacles here in the reversal? Who is it that you might be dealing with that has that King of Pentacles? Or is it an energy within your own thoughts that has become a little corrupted? And it's the Page of Wands. It's the card of dishonesty, again, that we saw earlier on. Again, a repeating of that ability to make a mistake in terms of saying something too quickly, saying something with an accident. But when you combine the idea of corruption with the idea of somebody who's a little bit dishonest, either to others or themselves, then you sway a little bit away from somebody who just makes a happenstance mistake and more into the territory of somebody who needs to kind of get their shit together, to be quite frank. And, you know, when you make a mistake too many times, how many times do you consider it a mistake before it's something that's actually corrupted and you actually say, hey, this is a problem? Whether it's a line of thinking that's leading to dishonesty or whether somebody is actually doing something dishonest. Because remember, at the beginning of the reading, in dealing with this particular person, whoever it was that was playing the character of the Page of Wands, and for each one of you it'll be different, the after effects of that was a lot of suspicion. It was months of stagnancy, months of suspicion once this dishonesty came up. And I do not have any interest for your sake in watching you repeat that understanding. What I like, though, is you don't actually repeat it. In fact, you go into the world of the militant King of Swords, the Queen of Wands, intimacy and passion, and the Ten of Wands, most importantly, in the reversal, which we'll discuss in a moment here for the month of October, is you putting things down. You're like, I'm not dealing with this. You're going to this realms of like, I am for me, for my boundaries. I'm only accepting what I can tolerate as a human. It's a really another valuable and important lesson in love to learn, but it can be fairly heavy. We see 1 month of the potential of deception all of a sudden coming up in and around September. And then by October, you kind of look like you put your hands up a little bit here because the situation gets a little heavy. For some of you, it could be that you choose to put down a particular relationship that has been so up and down throughout this month. But for others of you, it could be just an understanding that something needs to be put down because it's too heavy to all deal with at one time, so you get a little strategic with it. Notice that this card of heaviness is actually sitting next to the card of intelligence and the card of military strategy. Now, I'm not talking about you asking about military operations. Think of the macrocosm and turn it into the microcosm of your life. It's, you know, this idea that of being logistical and strategical in your life. But again, sometimes it feels like a bit of a battle when you're dealing with the King of Swords and a need to kind of take these sticks and put them down. Now I'm going to tell you something else, though, about the Ten of Wands. A lot of people give this card a bad rep because he's carrying such a heavy load. But those 10 of Wands there, they are connected to the previous card, which is the 9 of Wands, essentially. And in that depiction is a picture of a palisade. What is a palisade? In medieval history, it is a fortress that's being barricaded by these big spikes. If you've ever seen an old Scottish castle, or you've watched a movie where there's an old fortress, you'll see big spiky wooden things on the outside of a castle sometimes, like a fortress, a fortified fortress. That's what a palisade is. Those big spikes are known as a palisade of protecting the fortress. So in the Ten of Wands, he actually dismantles everything that he was using to protect himself. He scoops it up and he gets rid of the reason why he feels like he needs to protect himself. And this could be the strategy that many of you use in the realms of dating and relationships or your journey into love. What you might be putting down is not a person. It is this aspect that you have had of protection. It is finally saying, I don't need to protect myself so much. Even if there was a mistake, even if there was dishonesty in the previous month, there's still this idea. See the home right here? That little house in the bottom of the card? It's still the idea that success and home is right there within your reach. So it's not too overburdening and heavy. In fact, what sometimes people can do with the Ten of Wands or in the realm of love and relationships, sometimes they can put down a little bit, get the rest of it to the house, and go back and pick up what they were doing, just giving it some time to chill out. Like imagine taking a huge bag of groceries down the street. I did this the other day, that's why I bring it up. And you come to your driveway and you're like, man, I could put half of these down and just come back to my driveway and get them later. Like in 5 minutes once I load everything in the house. That's the concept of the Ten of Wands. Nobody ever said that you have to put everything down when it comes to the Ten of Wands. But certainly it would benefit to put something down. And now that brings me to that dynamic again, shuffling with that other dark fantasy, beautiful deck. What is it that's being put down? It's the protection. I knew it. Two of Swords, the card of protection. And why? Why is somebody putting their protection down? Because in the end, see how they're blindfolded? They never really could see the problem for the fullness of the problem. In relationships, we can sometimes give ourselves a picture of what we think is to be suspicious, what we think is mistrustful, even though we've never actually seen it. It actually reminds me of a woman that I've dealt with recently who thinks that I might be after her man. She's never seen me speak to this man. I've never met this man. But in her mind, she creates an idea that I'm after her man when I could never be interested in someone like that. And so in relationships, to just give my example towards you guys, in relationships as a dynamic, sometimes we think there's a problem where there actually isn't, and we have these two swords next to us, metaphoric swords, ready to protect ourselves and guard ourselves so that we don't get hurt. What's happening here with the Ten of Wands is this energy of putting down the guards. And what is beautiful about the Two of Swords, see, I knew once we got to the end of 2026 to you, things were starting to get lighter, like a relationship was getting handled better. What I like about it is that Arthur Edward Waite in 1910, when he wrote that pictorial key to the tarot, when he published it for us to all examine, he mentioned that the reason that there's a connection, pardon me, I would rather say, there is a connection to the reason why this person has the Two of Swords in her hands, or right next to her, it's because she cares. It's actually a card of great, deep, tender affection. Because why else would you protect yourself unless you're at that state of being vulnerable? And why do you become vulnerable with a person? Because you care about them. This is why does somebody freeze up a little bit in a relationship? Why might they make a certain mistake in a certain way? Because they care about you. They're just expressing it in a poor way. I know a lot of people use the term avoidant, but realistically speaking, one person who could be avoidant may not choose to continue to be avoidant. They might have a time where they become more secure in their ways of dealing with relationship and attachments. And then the very same person who could be secure later on in a situation could change things up a little bit and exhibit a different energy. It's not necessarily the most useful to label everything as being permanent. Protecting yourself also doesn't need to be permanent. These are just ways of expressing how much we care about another person or about our outcome. And according to this, somebody cares enough. Somebody cares enough to put down what's heavy and allow for a more realistic approach in the relationship to occur, either in a relationship or the way that they are tackling and strategizing the world of love and dating and all of that jazz that comes along with it. So the month after you finally get to this energy of someone putting down the protection facet, feeling vulnerable, we come into the King of Swords. As I said, this is somebody who in the upright position is very intelligent, very militant, very strategic, but he is a king and he's in the upright position. So he is balanced. And he is balanced in his suit of the air, so much so that it is actually the King of Swords who is connected with justice. So that tells me that in love, where there has felt stagnancy in 2026, in the first part of the year, where there has felt like suspicion and mistrust, or there has been mistakes that have been made, because he holds the key with that sword in his hand, the sword of justice, because he holds that sword of justice, it tells me that there's likely to be a balancing that happens at the later end of the year. Once you put things down, or once your person starts to put this heavy load down, they suddenly enter this position of balanced dynamic within the relationship in terms of reestablishing the proper power dynamics and reestablishing trust and reestablishing order and reestablishing justice. The energy of the King of Swords, I want to also make mention. He's a lawyer's card. For those of you who are viewing this reading because of ups and downs with litigation, with divorce and things like that, that is an energy of judgment. And remember how earlier on in this reading I had mentioned that some of you, I can see a pattern of family dynamics, so maybe somebody who wants to have a family. I think there is something to be said about those of you who are not coming into this yearly reading because you are asking about the fulfilling of a current romantic relationship. But for some of you who are attempting to deal with justice within the justice system, Again, I always do these readings for entertainment purposes only, but because the King of Swords can come with judgments, you may see a connection between things that happen in January with the card of Judgment, and suddenly judgment connected to the January situation or conversations that were had in January showing up all the way in November of 2026. And we know proceedings like that can be very lengthy. So it's sometimes we would only hope to deal with legal proceedings or contractual negotiations or things like that smoothly. It would be our wish that we could deal with them in 30 days, but I wouldn't be surprised if for some of you it's a more lengthy kind of negotiation, because he's the negotiator, he's the lawyer, and he lays down a judgment that is firm and fair and balanced. So for those of you interested in receiving judgments, you could find a firm and fair and balanced judgment and communication coming in also for that month of November. Let me grab an extra clarification card here for a second before I do anything else. And let me kind of ponder a little bit for those of you dealing with single energy. Because again, it feels like there's this lesson, right? There's this integration that happens at the later part of the year for you. You put things down, you feel this need not to protect yourself so much. So I will say that because the King of Swords is a court card, Arthur Edward Waite specifically said the court cards represent people. So this could be an air sign quality person coming into your life who's very intellectual, who's very fair. And wouldn't that be just how it goes in the realms of relationships and learning and dating and integrating? If it's like within 30 days of you integrating this lesson of removing your boundaries, not boundaries, sorry, but removing your protection, you know, of the things that you might be suspicious or mistrustful for, that all of a sudden the universe is like, hey, now that you've done that, here's a partner, here's a King of Swords energy, you know? So for some of you, you might be dealing with that. The Magician card is here in the reversal. That's the card of over-controlling. So for the King of Swords to be the card of judgment, justice, fairness, legal negotiations, and communication, it looks like his judgment, whoever it is that's making a judgment, whatever decision is going to be made between you and another person as a potential, or things that need to be balanced out, it's going to be surrounding a topic of something that you had over-controlled and needed to let go of. Also around a topic that you might have previously given yourself a sense of illusion over. Because the Magician, if it's in the upright, well, what does a magician do? They create magic. But if it's in the reversal, they create illusion. In both senses, they're making something that they desire to come forward. That's why it's the card of the manifester. If he wants to pull a rabbit out of the hat, he has to think in himself, what do I want to do? Oh, I want a rabbit out of the hat right now. And then he takes his tools and he creates that thing that he desires. In the reversal, again, there's an illusion attached to what they wanted and a need to reassess why the thing they thought they wanted, or what you may have thought you wanted, may not have been grounded in enough reality to achieve it. You may have been at some points in 2026 really trying to kind of force the situation to go faster, or come out with a different outcome. And it's at this point in November where all of a sudden somebody is looking at the situation and realizing, yeah, I can't do that. I have to just let it be balanced out, fair, so that you can reap the benefits of a good outcome. And now this brings me to the very last energy here of the month of December as we come up to this hour-long mark in this video, and we're looking at the Queen of Wands. It's a perfect ending to this reading. Let me tell you why. There's a rule of the King of Wands, or a rule of the Queen of Wands that Arthur Edward Waite specifies. He says, when the Queen of Wands stands next to a masculine character of a court card, it has its own specific meaning. It means she is favorable, friendly, kind, and loving towards a man in her life, if it is a woman. So if you are a woman watching this reading, and your Queen of Wands is your energy here, when you're entering into November, December area, you are meeting somebody. And it's not just a question of, oh, I'm suspicious, oh, I'm mistrustful. It is favorable energy. It is loving energy. In fact, it is a person who is honorable, right? And that you're well disposed towards this person. disposed. You're well disposed towards this person. I will say that doesn't necessarily have to mean that it is a man coming into your life. If your preference is not a masculine vibe, whoever it is, if you're a female, though, this applies. According to Arthur Edward Waite, whoever it is that comes into your life, it is a friendly, loving, honorable bond. If you're a masculine energy, then you have somebody coming into your life that can actually complement you in terms of your lifestyle, your economy, your business. It brings up the kind of person that you can have good partnership with, which is wonderful also. Now this, for those of you who have this entire 2026 stayed with someone, and maybe there's been ups and downs or suspicion throughout 2026, the Justice card comes in November. The balancing and the protection and the weights come down. And you enter into a situation where you look at the person you're with and you're like, oh my gosh, in the end, this is an honorable person. This is right where I'm meant to be. I love also with the Queen of Wands that there is no jealousy. That was the energy earlier on, a mistrust, suspicion, and jealousy. That is nullified by the time we get to December. Let's grab, though, as we end this off here, my dark fantasy tarot, and let's just put a little bit of a summary next to the Queen of Wands here. This beautiful energy that we have. No way. Look at that. Oh my gosh, guys. This is how it works. Did we not just take the very card that in the initial part of the reading symbolized mistrust, suspicion, and jealousy and put them in the upright position? Removing the jealousy, removing the mistrust. And I'm going to tell you, when you have two queens together, there's a specific meaning that also means sincere relations, sincere friends. And for those of you who are trying to build something with your partner, or if you're interested in a partner, you join up with somebody essentially that also brings in the realm of pentacles, like a little bit of empire building, working with each other on a business. It's really nice in that sense too, because two queens can mean work. You're doing something, you're working in the right direction with this person. And what better way to do that if not first by removing jealousy and mistrust and suspicion? Two people who work together under, those situations being removed is a way more beneficial relationship. I also want to say that overall, the Queen of Pentacles in the upright has three main meanings, especially in the realms of divination: fairness, generosity, and a magnificent sense of stability and security. What better way to end your year 2026 in the holiday season than with a person who gives you such a sense of generosity and kindness and stability? Like, that's the chef's kiss in this entire reading. A beautiful dynamic indeed. I'm going to leave you off with this. I'm going to upload this for you. If any of you are ever interested in a reading like this, I do have 12-month readings available. Or if you're ever interested in just chatting, I'm a regular girl. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook on my personal accounts. You can add me, friend request me. I'm the only Winnie D that has green hair in her profile picture, so I'm really easy to find. Many blessings to you guys. You guys deserve it. You have many lessons coming in 2026 and a fantastic end to your year. It will take some time, but it'll be worth it in the end, with tons of security and stability to boot. All right. Thank you very much, guys. And thank you for tolerating me, shuffling about in this reading again while dealing with my kids. You guys are amazing for that. Also, I appreciate the support and the understanding. Thank you very much, and ciao for now.